Hello and thank you for joining us. This is Brian, your host of the Perish the Thought Show. The opinions of said host and our guests have not been sanitized or scientifically tested, so please consume at your own risk. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. Today's episode is a little bit of a heart-wrencher, and I don't believe I've cried on any podcast until now. My guest is Samie Hardman, and she is the mother of 12-year-old Drayke Hardman, who back in February of 2022 took his own life as a result of being bullied in school. Drayke was the epitome of empathy and kindness and love in his 12 short years. She kindly joins me to talk about the signs and events that led up to his tragic suicide and how the family is not only coping but thriving in the 8 months since he passed. We talk about how as parents, students, and friends, we can watch out for and help bullies recognize the damage they're doing and to try to get them the help they need, as well as protecting the victims through our love and our kindness. So get out the tissues and get comfortable. Samie, thank you so much for being here with me today. And my hope is to, well, of course, one, bring more awareness to this issue in the hopes that it doesn't happen again. And, it almost sounds cliche that every time there's a tragedy, you see the parents on the news saying, we got to do more so this doesn't happen again, but it just seems to keep happening again. I don't know. And it just breaks my heart that we're here, that I'm meeting you under these circumstances, but here we are. So I had kind of an outline-ish, but maybe just tell my audience what happened, how it happened, how this all started, and where we, maybe the signs people can look for. We can go down 6 different roads, but I don't want to get in the way of you telling this yet again.
Well, our story began about a year ago, when Drayke, the end of Drayke's 6th grade year, he started having some issues with there was a couple of kids at first, that he was having some bullying issues with. Now, Drayke's a small kid. He was about 4'8", 4'9", give or take. In his eyes, he was a giant. But so he was a new kid at school. He had some kids that were kind of picking on him, but one in particular that really decided that he wanted to make Drayke's life hell, on every level. It didn't matter if Drayke decided to become friends with his friends or become friends with his siblings, whatever push comes to shove, this kid always made it rough for Drayke. And unfortunately, Drayke was the kind of kid that, like, he just loved you regardless. Like, he didn't care if you were mean to him. In all retrospect, he wanted to try to be this kid's friend. So
which speaks to his character as a young soul, that he's miles beyond many adults, really.
He truly was. He from the time that he was born, he just never, like, he just loved people. Like, we never had stranger danger with him. Like, he would have gone with anybody at a park. He would have gone. He's your fear of a child when it come to going anywhere with anybody at any time. So it just showed that was just his demeanor. Like, his demeanor was just like, he was just born to love is really all it comes down to with how Drayke was. So with the issues that we were having with this kid, a lot of it was, at first, was just physical, some emotional stuff. Never online. There was no online bullying, which nowadays is a big thing. And Drayke was very he was very vocal with us at first, with everything. And then sixth grade got out, and kind of, kids, it's summer, kids go their separate ways and kind of do their things. The difference is Drake and this kid both had mutual friends. They actually had a mutual best friend. So,
COVID backgrounds.
my dogs.
Happens every time. It happens every time on my end too. We may get that on my side too with my stupid alarm system.
My kids just got home, so my dogs are going crazy.
That's okay. Makes it more real.
Yeah. So as summer kind of occurred, they all kind of went their own ways. There was a couple of times where Drake and this kid were kind of, they still were around each other because they were around the same friends. And it was like every time that they were around each other, something always went wrong. And there was always negativity, whether something was said wrong. And there was a couple of times Drake wasn't innocent. Like, he was very, very good to stick up for himself and try to put this kid back in his place. But it always came back to us telling him that, it's just be kind. And so we started noticing in probably July of 2021, Drake started developing a really bad anxiety, something that he's never had in his entire life. And it became to the point where it was almost like debilitating to his everyday life. It hit him hard, and it hit him like a brick. And he didn't want to leave home. He didn't want to leave. It was like he feared for our safety. He would call me like 6 or 7 times to make sure I made it to work, to see how my day was at work. I had to call him, and this continued, and it continued into as school started. And it was almost like a lead up to as it got closer to school, it started to get worse. And we took him into his pediatrician, and they did a full mental health workup on it. We had to do this whole packet. It was a little overwhelming, and but it came back, and they diagnosed him with severe anxiety and panic disorder. And so he had some therapy that he was going through and talking to, and we also put him on medication.
So let me back up. Part of the anxiety was causing him to fear for your safety, or was he fearing that this kid would hurt your family?
It was just more like he was almost scared that something would happen to us. Like, either we'd get in a car accident, and it was almost like it became a really intense version of separation anxiety. And he didn't want to go to his friend's house. It was like he was worried about leaving us. And so at first we couldn't, that's why it was hard for us to kind of distinguish, like, where was this coming from? And then once we got him on medication, he kind of started coming back to his normal self, and then school started. And as school started, everything kind of went back to where it left off at the end of his 6th grade year, as far as with this kid. And there was some physical stuff that would happen, and Drake would come home and he'd have bruises on him. And at first it was usually like, I fell during basketball, or there was always kind of excuses for it, like different reasons. And then he always fessed up and said, so-and-so did this, or he hit me at recess, or he tripped me, or stuff like that. And every time he did that, I would go into like mama bear mode, and I would go straight to the school. And the school was really good to work with us, and trying to getting things like this taken care of. But it seemed to be, the more I was proactive, the more it was hurting Drake on the back end. And that's what we didn't catch. And that's what we weren't realizing, that when this kid would get in trouble and he would get suspended and he would be gone, when he come back to school, there was background retaliation of things that were happening. And then things started to happen. where we couldn't catch it on video. So there was things that would happen in the bathroom.
Okay.
And so this, like I said, this continued on up until the day. Anyway, so this back and forth nonsense that we'd hear about it, and then we thought it started to get quiet about December, and so we thought that maybe everything had kind of gotten better. Drayke didn't really say much of anything. He wasn't coming home complaining. He seemed to have a decent attitude and stuff when he would come home from school. He didn't seem down. He didn't seem angry or anything. And then that all continued, and like I said, we thought everything was good until the week everything happened. So the week that Drayke had passed, he came home Monday from school, and he had a black eye, like a pretty good black eye. And my husband was like, dude, what happened to your eye? And Drayke had already had this story of so we have a 170-pound puppy. And when I say puppy, it's because he's only one.
Yeah, that's not a puppy. That's a child. That's another adult.
It is. He's bigger than everybody in our family. So he said that he was wrestling with Carl, and Carl hit him with his paw, and he got a mark on his eye, and which is a realistic thing. And so my husband was like, oh, okay. And then I got home from work the same day and later that night, and I seen the same mark on his face, and I was like, dude, what happened to your face? And he's like, Carl hit me with his paw. And I was like, oh, okay. Didn't think anything of it. My middle daughter, took Drayke to basketball that night, and Drayke told her what had really happened. And he had gotten hit in the face in the bathroom by this kid. And he had told her that stuff like this had been going on. But every time he tells us and I say something, it just gets worse for him at school. And so he made her promise not to tell me. And so we go into the next day, and I'd had Tuesday off from work, and kids went to school, came home, everything was fine. My daughter called me into her bedroom later that evening, and Tuesday evening, and you could tell she was upset, and she's like, I need to talk to you. And so I said, okay. And Drayke and my oldest daughter were in the kitchen doing a project for one of Drake's classes. And I was like, okay. I said, I'll talk to him. And she said, he promised me not to tell you because he says it gets worse for him at school. And so I said, okay. I said, I'll talk to him. So I let him finish his project, and then I brought him out to the couch. I was like, hey, bud, can we talk for a minute? And he said, yeah. And I said, I don't want you to be mad at Miss Haley, but you told me what happened with your eye. And he kind of sighs. He's like, and I was like, buddy, you got to tell me. You got to tell me when these things happen. And he just said, but when I tell you and he gets in trouble, it just gets worse for me. So I said, okay. I said, well, what do you want to do? And he was kind of like in an awe, like he didn't know what to do. And I said, okay, well, how does it make you feel? Like, what are you feeling? And he says, I'm just mad. And I said, okay. I said, it's a valid feeling. I said, I need you to be able to come to me and talk to me about these things, because I can't let you get stuck in your own head. And he's kind of looked at me, and he's like, I don't know what that means. And I said, well, have you ever had, it's the hard questions. I said, have you ever had thoughts where maybe, you might want to harm yourself. And he's like, no. Like, he was almost disgusted that I would even ask him those questions. And I said, I need to know, bud. I need to know. And he's like, absolutely no, Mom. No, I would never would. And I'm like, do you promise me? And he said, a pinky promise. And so Tuesday, he pinky promised me that he would never hurt himself. So I gave him a hug, and I sent him to bed. And we all woke up and got up the next day. Did our normal routine. Kids went to school. I went to work. I came home, or I was at work, and I got a call about 8:30. And I had missed it. And so I come back after I just stepped out of my office, and I came back in, and so I was returning the call from my husband, and he didn't answer. And so I was like, okay, well, we're just playing phone tag. And he called me again. And when I answered the phone, he was hysterical. I just kept telling him I said, calm down. And he told me that Drake had tried to take his life and Michelle had found him. And at that point, I'm freaking out because I'm 45 minutes away. And I don't know what to do. And I just kept yelling on the phone, like, is he okay? Is he okay? Is he okay? And he just said that the paramedics were working on him. And he didn't know. He just kept saying he didn't know. And after talking to him on the phone for a few minutes, I heard the paramedics yell from our house, and they had yelled that they had got a heartbeat. And so at that point, I'm sitting at work, and I'm trying to decide, like, where do I go? Do I go home? Do I go? And so he says that they're going to take him to primaries. I worked in West Jordan, so my goal was to get to primary children's before Life Flight landed. So I somehow figured out how to compose myself, put gas in my car, and drive up to primary children's. And so I got to primary children's about 5 minutes before Life Flight had landed. And they brought him in, and he was purple and lifeless. And when I tell you, it's every parent's nightmare to see your baby in that state of mind is an understatement. And so my husband drove up with my brother-in-law, and when he came into the ER, he just kept saying, I'm sorry. And I hugged him, and I told him that because of him doing CPR and the girls helping to get the paramedics there, that they saved him so that I could see him. And then the hospital did all their stuff. They did a CT scan. CT scan showed that Drake had a lot of brain swelling in his poor little brain. And he couldn't, the first 24 hours is extremely crucial. The first 72 is kind of the vital of their brain's gonna swell, it's gonna not swell. But the first 24 hours are the crucial. And so they got him settled up in his ICU room. And I just heard these stories of the little girl Izzy who had just done this. November of 2021. And she was on life support, I think, for like a week.
Another local girl?
Yeah, she was in Bountiful. She was 10. So she was younger than Drayke. Her story is sad. It's so sad. And so in the back of my mind, I knew that I couldn't wait a week. And so as we got Drayke all in his room and settled, was stable. His heart was beating on his own. Andy had gone down to talk. We had a bunch of family members and they went down to talk. And I leaned my head into Drayke and I whispered in his ear and I just told him that I needed his help. I needed him to help me make this decision. Because in 3 days, I couldn't make the decision to pull him off of life support, and it wasn't something that I wanted to do. So I needed him to help me. We had a pretty stable night up until about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. And then we started noticing little things like his eyes would blink. And so they put an EEG on his head. And because they thought maybe he was having some seizures. And they couldn't correlate the blinking with anything neurological as far as seizures, and so they chalked it off to, they think that maybe he was just dreaming. And so you hear that, and it's that false hope. Okay, he's dreaming, which means maybe his brain's okay. And then we started noticing like his blood pressure would kind of jump and then fall and jump and fall, and his urine output wasn't what it was supposed to be, and so they came in and they did a kidney function test, and his kidneys were starting to fail. So at that point, we knew that eventually it was that he was gonna go. And about 8 o'clock in the morning, all the doctors had come in and they were doing their rounds, and and we were in there talking with the nurses. We hadn't had the hard conversations. We hadn't had the DNR. We knew that we were getting to that point, but we weren't there yet. And the doctor came in and we were talking, and at like 8:17, Drake's heart rate went from 146 to 30. And so the nurse yelled, if we're gonna save him, we need to do it now. As a mom, your first instinct is to yell, and I yelled for them to save my baby. So the nurse jumped up there and she's doing CPR and she's doing chest compressions on Drayke. And the doctor just looks at us and she's like, if he makes it, he's not going to be the same. And so I looked at Annie and I said, I can't do this to him. This is his sign for us. And so I literally pushed the nurse off of him and I crawled up next to him on the bed. And Andy climbed up on the other side and we laid there. And I laid there with my head on his heart. We laid there for about 10 minutes until he finally took his last beat. So he knew, and he was preparing us through the night to let us know that he couldn't fight this. And that he knew that even being gone, that there was so much more that he could do. And that this was a fight that we needed to fight for him. And we are. So, our girls weren't at the hospital.
we had to have my sister bring them, and all the questions that they're asking on the way to the hospital. And we allowed my sister to tell them that Drayke had passed before they got to the hospital, because I feared giving them the news at the hospital. And so when they got there, and they came in and seen him, and we sat with him in the room for probably 4 or 5 hours. And we sat there and we told stories and we talked about him, and all the, like, his heart and how pure he was, and like the love that he just had for people. And that's where the hashtag Do It For Drayke movement came from. Was my girls were just like, we'll do it for Drayke. Everything we'll do it for Drayke. And when I went home that night, I was laying in bed, I couldn't go to sleep. I had more of the guilt of leaving him at the hospital than probably anything. And I laid in my bed and I wrote this whole thing out, and it was kind of out of anger. And under the circumstances of, did I think it would reach as many people as it did? Absolutely not. I thought it would just my 600 followers that I have on Instagram. But it was something that needs to be talked about. It needs to be surfaced. And did I want to label myself as the mom that lost her 12-year-old son to suicide? Because a lot of families don't want that. They don't want to be in fear of being judged and fear of being shamed. It's a good thing people don't know me that well, because I don't care about either one of those. And so I did. I threw Drayke's story into the world, and I put our family out there. And then I laid there, and eventually I fell asleep. And when I woke up the next morning, the outreach was ridiculous. I had people from other countries that had reached out, that had Drayke's story had hit, and
just like, overnight.
Just overnight.
Wow.
24 hours. I literally, when I tell you, I literally only had like 600 people maybe that I was friends with on Instagram. And a lot of those are kids that I went to high school with, and family members and coworkers, and people I literally knew, to the point where like my profile was public, because generally if somebody added me, they knew who I was. It wasn't. And so when I had woke up the next morning, it was like 180 something thousand people that were following me on social media.
That is mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's like I can't even describe to you how overwhelming it is. And because in my mind I start to think, like, is it there for support, or is it they just want to look into my life? Like, are they wanting me to be this? Everybody's like, you can be this influencer, and like, I'm really boring. Like, I'm not like this person that can get on and talk on there every day and do everything. Like, but I'm also not. I chose to not be the sad mom. I don't know if that makes sense at all, but
yeah, it's not going to cripple you. It's going to fuel you.
It's exactly
versus
it. And that's
being woe is me, I'm so sad, which you are clearly for obvious reasons. But I get it. I totally get it.
I chose to let it to fuel me and to fuel my fire, and to bring awareness to that suicide can happen, that it can happen in kids. And the difference is that maybe the signs that you see in adults can be a little bit more valid, and more visible. But I had a talk with my 12-year-old son the night before anything happened. And the signs weren't there. And so a lot of times with this kind of situation in ages of kids between like the ages of like 10 and 14, 15, it's not something that's carried out and planned. It's not, there's no letters, there's no text messages, there's no signs, there's no signs.
Do you think it's just more of an instinct because they don't really know how to process or plan or even that's when like explains why he got so frustrated when you asked him if he was thinking about harming himself.
Yeah, it's not something that goes through their minds. It's a quick impulse of a decision that they make, and they don't understand the consequences that it leaves behind. That's why where you have a lot of kids that that will have suicide attempts and they'll survive them. And then there's the select few, like Drayke and Izzy from Bountiful, and their bodies are so little and their brains are so small that they can't. And had Drayke survived it, had Drayke made it, he would have been bound to a wheelchair. He would have been like basically a vegetable. And if you know that kid, that's not him. It's not the life that he would have wanted. I mean, that kid did not stop moving until he fell asleep at night. From sunup to sundown, he was all over the place. So it's I have a lot of people that ask me, like, what are the signs that you saw? I didn't see any. Drayke didn't have any. There were some things that we found out about a week later, of some stuff that had happened to him the day of. And he was body slammed in the hallway as he was leaving school. And so when he got home, they said that his demeanor was a little bit quiet, but not anything out of the norm, like not anything like out of the ordinary that we would have been like, are you okay, bud? Like, he just came home and he was just more like, he was just mellow. Not that he was sad. He wasn't angry. He was just kind of more mellow throughout the day. He didn't want to he's supposed to have basketball practice that night, Wednesday night. And he told his sister and told his dad that he didn't want to go. He had a big bruise on the side of his knee that he claimed that he tripped it during playing basketball at school, which wasn't the case. And so all of that happened that day, could that have played a part to what happened? Absolutely. But not anything to the visible eye for us to be able to think that something would have happened.
Well, it's so out of character. Why would you think that?
Yeah. Well, and I just had a conversation with him less than 24 hours ago. And
maybe you mentioned this, but my brain was just trying to process the grief you must be going through. But so he went to bed that night, and that's when it all happened. Like, you just didn't wake up in the morning? Did I miss that?
No. So Tuesday night we all went to bed, and then Wednesday morning we all woke up. He went to school.
Okay.
It was Wednesday evening. Okay. And so he just got up from the couch. They were all watching a movie. And he had during the middle of the movie, he just got up and excused himself, said he was kind of tired, went into his room, closed his door and locked his door. And that's one policy kind of we have at home is you don't lock your door. There's never any need. He's the only boy. Nobody's gonna go in there if he's changing. It always gets knocked on first. My daughter got up to go check on him and wiggled his door handle, and his door was locked, and so she was yelling at him through the door and he wasn't responding. And so she went and grabbed something to unlock his door, and when she unlocked his door, he had hung himself on his bunk bed. So for an adult to find that would be devastating for a 16-year-old girl. And she let out a scream, and my other daughter came running in, and he'd used a hoodie, so there was no marking on him. But his sisters had to untie him. And then my husband gave him CPR until the paramedics got there. All because one kid just doesn't know how to be kind. And so now it's a daily struggle here every day with PTSD triggers. And my daughter was in my bed last night just sobbing like she can't. It's my oldest, or my middle daughter. It's her senior year of high school, and she can't balance out her panic attacks at school. So she has to be put online as a senior. You're supposed to be able to enjoy your senior year. My oldest daughter had to finish her senior year out through summer school. She didn't get to walk with her class because she missed a month of school grieving her brother. So it's me reaching out to parents and to teachers and to everybody that has interactions with kids to be that example. Especially the ones teaching our kids, because they might be the only safe place that these troubled kids have. They might be the only outlet that they have. And if they don't have that at home, and they're not getting the support and the love and the attention that they need at home, then they're acting out at school, and somebody is getting the attention for it.
You're talking about the bully kids?
Mm-hmm.
I am so sorry. I can't even imagine what that must be like. I've had this question since I first heard about your story. Did this kid change?
No.
Like he didn't see how he contributed. Maybe that's the same, same age. Somebody just not thinking that could cause someone to feel so bad that they would feel that their only solution was to take their life.
My biggest concern when all of this happened, and maybe it's the mom in me. I don't know. I don't really know. Or maybe it's the Drayke coming through. But my biggest concern was when we went to the school to pick up Drayke's stuff out of his locker. We met with the principal and the assistant principal, because there was a bunch of like gifts and books and stuff that the kids had made. And my first concern to her was to watch this kid. Because as an adult, if I were to know that I was so mean to somebody that ultimately led them to think that the only way that they could feel better was to not be here anymore. As an adult, that's heavy. It's hard to carry. So as a kid, I was worried. And I didn't want this to happen to his parents. As angry as I was, and as angry as I even still am now, I would never even wish this upon his family. I would never want his mom to feel the way that I have to feel every day. Like I said, I think that's a little more of the Drayke that's in there, that's guiding me through that. But the problem is 2 weeks after Drayke had passed, he just moved on to another kid. It's like it never happened. There was no emotions. There was no now there is some issue. There was some charges that were pressed, not by us, but by this other kid that he started to pick on. There were some charges and stuff that were eventually pressed on him, and he was removed from the school for the remainder of the school year. But as far as I know, as of now, I think he might be back there. But from what I hear, like nothing's changed. Like his demeanor hasn't changed. His personality hasn't changed. Like it's almost like there's not a switch in there to know that what he's doing is even wrong.
In terms of like connection with his family, his parents, I assume has there been contact from you to them, or are they being
No,
shielded, or are they just, I don't even know how to ask the question or where to go with that, but are they making him aware of the significance of his behavior?
there's a really fine line, I guess, there. As in communication, as far as us know. I chose to, after everything happened, everything between them and us needed to be communicated through the school. I didn't want to deal with it on and out. We live in a small town. Do I see him? Yeah. Have I run into him in the grocery store? Absolutely. Is it gut-wrenching? Yeah. But I don't, the last thing I would ever want the world to know is the identity of this kid, because the world would rip him apart, and the family.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
and so it's hard because like I said, I see him in the grocery store. I see him, at when we go to support some of Drayke's other friends, like generally they're there. And but because his victims came out as adults and they came out right as COVID had hit, he only served 90 days in jail and then got 3 years probation. And because of that, they didn't even make him register as a sex offender. So this person is still involved in the lives of this kid, this bully, and his siblings. And is it a contributing factor? I don't know. Do I think? I think so. I think there's absolutely, because stuff that we found out that was done to Drayke and stuff that was done to this other kid, like 12-year-old kids don't know that stuff. They don't. A
It's
lot of us, you can't even, yeah.
it's taught. It has to be taught.
It's taught or it's seen.
Yeah.
And, so that's why through our foundation with Drayke and being his advocate, or his voice, is to not only structure saving these victims who are being bullied, but it's saving these victims who are the bullies, because it's a full circle.
Because his life is going to be destroyed as well if he doesn't recognize it or is not taught.
I fear for his safety as an adult. I really do. And or other people that he comes in contact with. Like I really do. and it's hard for me. It's hard for me to sit back and watch it unravel, because I know I'm a victim of what he's capable of. And I, unfortunately, we got the repercussions of it. But it really is. It's really hard to kind of sit back and be like, when you see things or you hear things, and you just kind of have to put your blinders on, or protect the people around him as much as you can with little information.
So the family, and again, I may have asked you this, are they acknowledging and or owning any of, or are they just like, this is not my kid kind of thing?
I think it went back and forth for a little bit. Like I said, we don't have contact with them unless I see them, and when I see them, it's kind of like a deer in the headlights kind of a thing. I walk my way, they walk theirs, and so I don't really know. I know that when the criminal charges were pressed, and the officers would try to interview him, the parents, like, he was almost like groomed in his interviews on what he could say and what he couldn't say, and they were very uncooperative.
If they're in denial about it, then that makes total sense that would happen.
Correct. There was an incident where one of Drayke's friends, so Drayke and one of his really good friends, Zoe, they were part of starting the Hope Squad at the junior high, because it's a charter school. And I'm sure, I don't know if you're aware of like kind of what the Hope Squads are, but what they do is, so the Hope Squad, it helps kids who are struggling with mental health issues and or suicide ideation. And it helps them to be able to talk to they talk to other kids. They help give them the resources, I guess. And they're advocates for these other kids. And so like I said, Drayke and his friend Zoe were a big part of starting this. And so it's like he built this foundation for something that he fell victim to at the school. And so his friend Zoe, she was also kind of bullied by this same kid. She put a petition together at the school and talked to the 7th and 8th graders. And in a matter of like 3 hours, she had a list of 14 kids that were being bullied by this one kid. They were all victims of him. And he had 14 victims, and they all had one bully. And she took it to the administration of the school, and the principal basically ripped it up in her face and told her that she needed to stop being a bully to this boy. And so and this was probably 2 or 3 months after Drayke had passed. For some reason, the schools kind of started protecting him. And the hard thing is when you go to a school like that, and I mean, the kids knew who Drayke's bully was. They seen it. And so at that point, like, the teachers, the administration kind of put a bubble around him. I mean, he wasn't getting picked on by these other kids, but it was like these other victims, they couldn't come out and say, hey, he's been doing this to me, or he's been mean to me, without basically being called a liar. And we pulled ourselves completely away from all things the school, and our damage was done. But anytime I got a phone call from a mom that went there, that was like, my kid was kind of being bullied by him as well, like, what do we do? And talk to the principal. That's a tough
and I get what they're trying to do, because he's just a little kid. He's someone's kid too, and if he was 18,
He'd be in the system.
He'd be in a system, or other 18-year-olds would be pummeling him. I think that's a I don't know. That's
It's
a tough
like
one.
I said, it's a double-edged sword. It's a double-edged sword.
This is rough. This is really rough. That's harder to wrap your brain around, I think, than your son taking himself out, is that this is continuing, and they don't see the result of that kind of behavior, what it did to your family.
Right. Yeah.
Or they see it and they're just ignoring it, which is worse.
Yeah. So we've made it our mission to go after these schools, I guess, is basically, I mean, you don't ever want to go after a kid. That's never going to make matters better.
Yeah, because he's a child.
Yeah,
he doesn't know what he's doing. He does not know what he's doing.
And if he does, then there's psychological issues going on there that is going to take far more therapy than I'm even capable of knowing what would even be needed. But it's just teaching these schools that how to be able to identify these kind of situations and not push it under the rug. It's hard. Utah is really hard with mental health issues and with suicide issues. It doesn't want to be talked about. And even still, the suicide rates that Utah's had in the last year, I can think of 5 off the top of my head that have happened since Izzy in November. So her being the first that I knew about in November, followed by Drayke, followed by I was a female up in Ogden, 16 years old. There was another boy in Bountiful, I want to say 16, 17 years old. And then followed by, I think there was another one in Utah County. And this is all within, I mean, Drake's been gone 7 months, 8 months. So within almost a year span, we've lost that many kids. Like that's
from bullying or other reasons as well.
Between bullying and mental health, and or both.
And you said the school was behind you when you first started reporting this, that they were on board and helping you, right? Was this a gradual shift, or did they just overnight decide not to be helpful anymore?
I don't know. They were really good up until probably 2 or 3 weeks after Drayke had passed. Then we kind of noticed some shifting every time I would go into the school. So like kids would write cards for us. They basically turned his locker into like a little memorial for the remainder of the year. And so kids could write him letters and drop them inside of his locker. And then the administration would call me and I'd come and pick it up. And the office ladies, like they adored him. So every day when Drayke got to school, he'd go into the office ladies and he'd slam his hand down on the desk and he'd be like, "You ladies have the best day." Every day. And it's the little things like that we didn't know about. And so they were really good to work with us and they were really supportive afterwards. And then it was it was almost like a switch flipped. And then all of a sudden, it's just mainly the principal. And she knows that I'm not a fan. And all of a sudden she just decided that she needed to start protecting him. And I get that. I get it 100% that she that she wants to protect him, but she's got a school full of kids that she also needs to protect. And how many lives need to go before she sees the damage it's causing? And then after that, yeah, when the other kids would try to come forward, it was like, oh well, it's no big deal. And we found out that, so the Safe UT app that's really big. So Drayke was one of 2 schools that didn't have it. The principal opted out of having it because she had a couple parents that had come to her and said that they didn't want their kids talking to a therapist or talking to somebody on the phone that they weren't aware of, that they didn't know. And so because of those 2 concerns, she opted out of having access and giving the kids access to be able to have Safe UT, which I'm a huge advocate for. Like, I've talked in schools and I push that app, because that app is the one thing that will save lives. And it's educating parents to realize that through this app, that yes, your kid might reach out for help, but by the time that they're reaching out for help, the school's been notified, the principal's been notified, or the school district's been notified, the school's been notified, parents are getting notified, especially because it's a child. And what everybody's getting notified, your kid is talking to somebody who is potentially on the other line, saving their life and talking them out of a dark place. And parents they're not comfortable with that. They're comfortable with their kids having a Snapchat account or Instagram or whatever social media platform where they can, talk to whoever they want or bully whoever they want. But they don't want their kid to be able to talk to somebody that could potentially help them, save them from a matter. Drayke didn't have access to that. Would I have let him have it on his phone? Absolutely. Because my girls both have it. But because she chose to listen to the voice of just 2 parents, my son didn't get that. He didn't get to be able to have that as an outlet. To be able to, do I think that maybe he would have reported these things happening? Maybe. I don't know. We'll never know.
Because it's anonymous, right?
Yep. It is. You can do it anonymous, and then you can do it not anonymous. So like if you call for yourself because you're in a dark place and you're struggling, they know who you are. And by doing that, it's so that they can get the help and resources that they need to you as quick as possible and get into the school. But you can report bullying, you can report pretty much everything on there. In fact, if you click on the Safe UT app, the very first thing that comes up is acts of kindness. So you could report people who are kind. And people don't even do that.
Does that school have it now or no?
Yep. Because the senator, Daniel Thatcher, who's our senator out here, he was parted and he had a hand in putting together the Safe UT app. And so when he found out that their school didn't have it, he called the principal himself and basically tore into her and was like, why?
And that makes no sense that she would not. That's crazy.
And they have it now.
There's something more to that, I think, but it's like they don't put a stoplight up in an intersection until someone dies and they can justify it.
And even then it's like, how many times? Like how many more accidents or how many more kids get hurt before they're like, okay, maybe. We've had 1 fatality and a few accidents. Okay, maybe we'll.
I can see the school resisting if 1, maybe 2 kids said, hey, this kid's picking on me, but 14. You said there was 14.
14.
Something doesn't add up. So what's happening? What's next? How are you sharing this? Are you in like a speaking circuit now, or are you in hot demand for telling the story at firesides and gatherings? I mean, you still have a job and a life, I assume you have to lead, and other kids.
I do. I'm not a public speaker.
You are now.
What? Yes, I've become one. And eventually it'll get easier. Maybe it won't. I don't know. I don't know how time will tell. But for us, we've started a movement with a couple of foundations back east, and it's called Bags Against Bullies. And it's through the cornhole world. So I don't know if you're familiar with how the cornhole world works, but it's
the game
huge.
Cornhole.
But,
Yeah,
like that you play in your backyard or camping.
That's taken off in some strange. That's an anomaly I don't understand. But anyway.
But they're a family. They are. So we had two guys that had reached out to us. It was around March. And it was supposed to be what would have been like a 30-minute Zoom call because they had something they kind of wanted to pitch at us. And that 30-minute Zoom call turned into 4.5 hours that we talked with our families and their families, and we cried, and we came up with what's called Bags Against Bullies. And through this, we started it through the cornhole world, and then we moved on with it a little bit, and we made backpacks. And on these backpacks, they're just kids' school backpacks. There's like drawstring backpacks as well. And on these backpacks, my girls and then the boys of these other two families just chose a bunch of kind words, and we just slapped them on the back in rainbow colors on the back of all over these backpacks. And with the hopes that if we can get them into schools and we can get kids wearing them, that how hard is it to pick on another kid when he's wearing a backpack that says all of these kind words? And so we got in like a trial packet. We handed them out, started with family members. My girls wore them last year. And the outreach of people wanting to buy them because they just fell in love with them. Like the compliments and the kind gestures that their kids would get from other kids, and kids who were being bullied were no longer being bullied, because how hard it is for a bully to go up to a kid and to say something to them when whatever they read on those backpacks they're positive and they're uplifting, that it makes their brains rethink for just a second, and then the mean doesn't come out.
It's almost like a spiritual force field of kindness.
It really is. And it took off a lot bigger than we thought it would. Like, when you just, what do you do? Like, you come up with different plans of what you can do. Like, I'm not the type of mom that wants them to name a law after my kid. I was even hesitant with the fact of trying to start a foundation, because I was like, why? Like, what's going to come out of a foundation? And there's this thing called the suicide contagion. And what it is it's when people start to fantasize and idolize somebody who's taken their life. And the way when Drayke passed, it went worldwide. And so the last thing we wanted people to do or to think is for them to think that Drayke was a celebrity, that he's this famous person. He's not he's just a kid with a big heart that loved the world. And what happens is kids can look upon this and be like, you know, if I did this, like maybe people would love me like they love Drayke, or maybe my family would get attention, or maybe, you know, all of these things. And so when we started Drayke's Foundation, we made it about who Drayke was as a person, what Drayke stands for, and Drayke is Drayke. So they're not the same. I have my son who is the true meaning of what it means to be empathetic, and how he's living proof of how empathy can come natural. And there's some people that, and I've met some of the most amazing people, and a lot of people that have reached out to me and they're like, my son reminds me of your son. And because they're kind and they're outspoken, or they're you know, they have blue eyes and blonde hair, like they start to pick the things out of their kids that they can equalize them with Drayke, and to help them process, I guess, their way of helping their kids be better people. And so that, like, that's been amazing. And like kids that I have a book that I'm going to be not writing. I'm not writing a book. Putting together, that I've had of Instagram messages that have been sent to me about, just from kids that have, you know, hearing Drayke's story and seeing the rawness of the pictures that I posted, and seeing those and hearing that and hearing about who he was saved their lives. And it made them think for a split second that that they want to live to be able to make others feel better. And so I've been compiling, I just kind of screenshot them and compiling them, and I'm going to have a book made of all of them, because that is our why. They are our why. They're the reason I'm vocal. They're the reason I'm becoming I don't even
celebrity.
know.
You were gonna say celebrity.
No, not celebrity.
Okay.
I'm so far from a celebrity. I still kind of get excited when my Instagram followers kind of dwindle down. Like, I'm not gonna lie. When I see them start to drop a little bit, because I told them, like, I'm not that cool. Like, I'm a sad mom, but I'm not gonna give you the sad posts every day. I'm not gonna wallow. I live day to day is really what I do. And I live for my kids. I live for my girls. My oldest daughter's having a baby in 8 weeks, and I'm going to be a grandma. And so I live for those moments, and I live for the moments that he, especially the ones that he would love and that he can't be here for. And on my hard days, and I feel the feelings. If I'm having a bad day and I'm angry, I allow myself to be angry. If I'm sad, I cry. I allow myself to feel 500 different emotions during the day, because that's what shows me that I'm going to be okay. And then if I have a really bad full day, it starts over tomorrow, and I wake up the next day, and it's a new day. And when I tell people that, who are grieving, because I have a lot of people that ask me, like, what advice do you have for grieving moms? Like, I don't have advice. I can tell you what helps me. But everybody grieves. I mean, we're in a house right now of 4 people, and 5 people, and we all grieve differently. And we're all grieving at different stages and at different times, because of the different things that we've had to endure. My daughters and my husband they have a lot of PTSD and a lot of trauma of the night everything happened that I don't have. And so there's days where I feel guilty because I would love for them to be able to 100% be able to put that behind them and be sad like me every day. I'm sad because I miss him. And there's days that they want to miss him, but they can't get past the scary. They can't get past the night. And that was my daughter last night when she was curled up in my bed. And she said, Mom, I want to miss him without being scared. How do I take that from her? How do I, as a mom, you want to take that and you want to make him feel better. And you just have to love him. And you have to love him through it. And so that's kind of what's next. It's the bags against bullies. It's me being the sad mom that talks to people, and I share my experience, and I share it raw. Of course there's places where you go, and I've spoken a couple firesides, and those are really difficult. They're really difficult to speak at, because so much you want to be able to tell these kids what they need to hear. And there's regulations you have to follow, and there's things that you can't say, and they want me to tell Drayke's story, but suicide can't be talked about. And so I have to figure out.
Sorry, can I stop you there?
Yeah.
Suicide can't be talked about at a fireside where you're talking about, like, are these like public events or church functions?
Church functions.
And you're not allowed to talk about suicide? Who sets that rule?
The last one that I spoke at was a bishop. I had a meeting with him prior. The young women's leader reached, and this was actually a small town. This is where I grew up. But she had reached out to me. She was my young women's leader. I've known her my whole life, and she teaches in a kind of a Spanish speaking ward, and she just wanted me to come in and talk about bullying and the effects that it can have, and basically literally just tell Drayke's story. She wanted me to be raw, and she wanted me to, and there's a lot of things we can't, like, there's a lot of things I can't do. I can't do I can't show pictures. A lot of that has to do with you need parental permission, because a lot of the pictures that we have and stuff at the hospital they're pretty raw. And
but you're the parent who's giving permission, right?
It's for parents have to give this so that their kids can see.
Oh, to see it. Yeah, okay. It's because it's NSF, not safe for work kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
This could trigger somebody. Okay.
So it could, and I mean, they could just Google his name and they can find him, but it's like that at schools too. I show the good pictures of him. I show the pictures of the things that he loved and that we loved about him, instead of the sad, because if you have to have a parent's permission to watch a PG-13 movie, I can't show pictures of my deceased son in a hospital bed. So there's fine lines kind of that you have to work around, but it's the church functions that I feel like are the hardest, because I got talked into doing this fireside, and it was I was really excited to be able to do it, and then I got there and it was like, okay, well, you can't talk about this. And so I basically I had an hour to talk about being kind and how to teach kids to be kind. That's really all I did, is I was basically there. I felt like I was lecturing them on how to be nice.
Which is all well and good, but you also need to show the results of not being nice.
Yeah. And
that's weird that they wouldn't. That's weird. Sorry. I can't wrap my brain around how stupid that is. Maybe I'm missing something.
I don't know. I've had that a couple of times, and then I've spoken at a couple of junior highs, and one junior high in particular out of West Jordan, I worked with a resource officer. She was an officer for West Jordan Police Department. I had worked with her for about 4 or 5 years. And so I was on my leave of absence from work, and she reached out to me and asked if I would be willing to speak because they have a really bad bullying issue at their junior high. And so myself, along with a guy named Presley Aronson, we spoke. We went to this junior high and we spoke. And Presley's amazing with how he speaks, because he speaks through. He's got a foundation called the Background Foundation, and he's living proof of how you can survive being bullied. He wrote a song called "The Background." I recommend you listen to it. It is a powerful song. And that's his life. He wrote that song about his life. He lived in LA. He went to school with a bunch of rich, famous people and famous kids, and he was bullied by them, told multiple times a day to kill himself. And he now is the owner of his own, his own production company. He is an artist. He sings. So when he speaks at school, he speaks through music. He sings his songs, and he talks. The way he can talk to these kids. He's only 22, and so he can relate to these kids. He's not much older than them. And so we spoke at the school where they were having. They're very active with the Safe UT app, and they were having like multiple times, like a week, where they were getting stuff in from the Safe UT saying that, you know, the fights and the bullying and the assaults, like, it was pretty extreme as far as what the officer said that they were dealing with. And so we came and we spoke, and a lot of it, all it really takes is allowing these kids to see that they're not. I think what kids think is when they're getting bullied, or a kid who gets bullied, is there's always like a label to it. Like, maybe they're nerdy, maybe they like video games, maybe they play chess. Like, there's you think that there's a label to being bullied. And so during these talks, what I do is you have everybody close their eyes, and everybody, even the teachers, and everybody close their eyes, and you raise your hand, or you tell them to raise their hand if they've ever been bullied. And 95% of them raise their hand, including the teachers. And so you tell them to keep their hands raised, and then you tell them to open their eyes. And when you have all of these kids open their eyes and they see all of these kids who are being bullied at some point in their life, it opens their eyes to know that maybe a kid on the football team, he gets bullied. Kid on the basketball team, cheerleader, popular girls at school. They're all getting bullied. They're all getting bullied by somebody. And then you see them all, like, they give each other a hug. And that school alone dropped just after my speaking. And a lot of kids, like I said, with Drayke's story, it went worldwide, but it hit Utah pretty hard. And when I started speaking, and all it took was for Drayke's picture to be put up on the screen, and these kids cried because they knew and they could relate because they're his age. To knowing and to be able to tell them that, you know, all it took for Drayke had 100 friends, thousands of friends. He was friends with everybody, but it only took one kid to prove to him that he wasn't worth it, to make him believe that he wasn't worth it. And so it's just showing kids and talking to these kids and getting them to all relate that they're all the same. They're all on the same level. And they just need to be kind.
That shows the power of evil. When one, again, the kid, I think evil, there has to be intent, but he just doesn't know that he's being evil. Because you said he had hundreds of friends. and yet the
Yeah.
one pushed him over the edge. That's
Yeah.
hard to get your head around.
It really is. Because Drake was he played avid basketball. He was a huge Pokemon fan, lover of all things jazz. He, we got books from the kids at school that I guess he would, because he was so little, and he liked to go up to all the tall kids, the super tall kids, and he'd get up on his tippy toes and he'd pat him on top of the head, and he'd be like, "You're short," and then they would tap him on the head and they'd be like, "You're tall." And so these stories and stuff that we learned at the viewing and these books that we have, that Drake was the tallest short person we ever met. And he was just a giant in a little body. But he always made people feel good about themselves. Like, he handed Pokemon cards out to homeless people. That was his thing. Like at the parks, at the grocery store, because he thought that if they ever looked at it, they knew that at one point, one person cared enough to give that to them, that they were thinking about them. And then he just talked to them. He wanted to know about their life. He wanted to know how they got to where they were. And no judgment.
Sounds like he would have had the same impact had he stayed. It just may have taken longer with a heart like that.
Yeah.
You guys are lucky because you got to know him.
I was telling, we were sitting on the couch. I was on one couch and Andy was on the other couch. And this was like the day before his funeral. And we had his viewing on a Friday, and we publicized his viewing. We made it public. And we had probably 800 people showed up to his viewing, which is remarkable. People that have flown in we had families that have flown in from different states. A couple families that flew in from like Venezuela, and all they wanted to do was just hug me or shake his dad's hand to be able to take our strength home and to see Drake and to be able to take his love just by seeing him, to be able to carry that back with them, to teach. And we did, so his viewing was on a Friday, and then we did his funeral on a Sunday. And so Saturday night we were sitting there on the couch and kind of just talking. We were talking about what it means, like a semicolon, what a semicolon really means. And I'd never really heard about any of this. Like, suicide was just never, it's not ever talked about. And so you don't ever really know about it until it happens to you. And I had read a thing that somebody had sent me about the semicolon. And I was like, I really don't know what this means. And so I looked into it, and it's the pause. It's the pause of one story. And I looked at Andy and I said, in the 12 years that we got to have Drake, he absolutely fulfilled every part of why he was here. A lot of people, when they lose kids, they lose them. And they're sad because there's no, like, what was their life? What did their life mean to anybody besides them? And I told Andy, I said, he absolutely did what he needed to do here. And so his life is really ending with a semicolon, because it's a pause of what he left for us to finish. And all the things that he's doing now, and the people that he's reaching. But very much like you said, he may have gotten through it, and he may have gotten to it. But it would have taken him longer. And now he can do it at a much bigger pace. he has a much bigger army that he gets to enforce and rally and spread through. And so I really, as much as it hurts every day, like and as much as I miss him, I truly believe that he fulfilled his plan here.
And he's got so much more reach now.
Yeah,
Spiritually.
absolutely.
None of us know the impact we have on the world around us, and we often think, oh, who am I? I'm a nobody. Like you said, I'm boring. I'm just a mom. I'm boring. I'm not the influencer. We tend to think that. We tend to go down that road.
Yeah.
We had friends of ours years ago, and their son accidentally took his life. And at the funeral, his dad said, "My son said he had no friends, yet this room has 500 people in it."
Yeah.
You wish you could see the impact you have. I guess you can in small circles, but to know the reach you have is tough to know.
Yeah.
It's a hard way to find out the reach that he had.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's hard to wrap your head around. Like, you have to stay away from the whys. You have to stay away from the what ifs. There's things, I mean, to lose a kid in any aspect, cancer, a freak accident, like to lose a child in general, the pain is the same. It's absolutely the same. Um, I've had people that are like, well, if you would have lost him this way, maybe it wouldn't have been as hard. Absolutely, you still lose them. Like,
The result is the same.
yeah, they're still not here. The hardest way to lose a kid is not knowing what was going through their mind before that decision was made. That is the hardest part. And those are the questions when you lose anybody to suicide, whether it be a kid, a spouse, a brother. Those are the questions you have to stay away from.
Because it's a rabbit hole.
And it'll eat you alive.
And he had such a positive impact, yet felt he had so much value, but yet he felt he had no value. Clearly, math doesn't make sense.
Nope.
Well, Samie, I don't want to take up the rest of your evening. I feel like we could go on and on. Is there anything that you want to share that I haven't asked you that anyone listening to this could take away?
I think I don't even know. As parents, I think if we listen to our kids, listen to what they have to say, learn their routines. I know as parents we get caught up in everyday life, whether it be work or home, or if your kids want to talk. And if you worry that something is going on, ask those hard questions. And as much as I would like to say that maybe in my circumstance, asking the hard questions didn't get me to where I didn't get Drake to where he needed to be, and it didn't work out in my one-time circumstance, your kids are going to tell you. They're going to show you. They're going to find some way for you to possibly know that something's going on. Like I said, Drake told us until it started to get worse for him. And that's when he stopped. And maybe if maybe when it got quiet, maybe I should have asked more questions. It's a turn of always ask the questions and always listen to the responses, and let our kids validate how they're feeling. Don't push them away, especially boys. A lot of, I think, the expectation of boys is that they have to man up, that they have to, be tough, and they don't get to be sad, and they don't get to feel these feelings. And then as they become teenagers, puberty happens, hormones happen, and they don't know how to navigate these feelings. And then as adults, they grow into adults, and conflicts happen, and things happen, and they don't know how to navigate what they're feeling, let alone to talk to somebody. And so I think as parents, if we choose to do this early, and we choose to listen and to talk and to ask the questions, ask all the questions, and have the conversations with your kids, whether it be you have a kid that's being mean to somebody, like don't reprimand them, love them through it, show them different ways that they can change. And if you have a kid that's being picked on or that's being bullied, help them find a solution that helps them, that doesn't hinder and cause issues for them, I guess, in the long run. That's about all I have.
That's a lot. Again, I'm so sorry that this is all your new world now, and I'm so grateful for you coming on and sharing this again. And I hope that we'll blast it out to everyone I can think of. And what's the best way someone could contact you if they wanted to reach out?
They can email me on it's doitfordrake12@gmail.com. You can reach out to me on any of my social medias, my Instagram. I don't know what my name is on there.
I'll put it all in the show notes, so you don't have to tell me.
Yeah, like those are, I'm pretty good. I've caught up on the majority of all my messages, so I do pretty good to try to get through them. And but if it's something that they've tried to outreach me on social media and it's maybe gone to a folder I haven't seen, then email is the quickest route to me, because I get those automatically. They don't spam out.
You got an amazing job ahead of you, but sounds like you guys are stronger as a family because of it, and are doing some amazing things to try to stop this kind of madness. So I thank you and your family. Thank your family for me.
I will do.
So
my daughter just tried to walk in. It's not gonna go.
Well, you should have brought her on. I don't mind talking to her as well. That might be, you know what, that might be it. If they are willing and able, is to talk to the siblings.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe see if they're open to that.
Yeah.
Might be just they can speak to the Utes, since I'm old.
Same. You and me both.
Well, you're gonna be a grandma. That's crazy. How is that possible when you're 30?
Yeah, I know.
Wow.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. It's fine.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. And if there's anything I can ever do, please let me know. Thank you again for listening to the Parish the Thought Show. We would love your comments and feedback on our website at briankeithparish.com/feedback. If you love or hate what you hear, please give us a rating on whatever platform you find us. Thank you again for listening to the show. I really appreciate the time you spend to hear the words and hear our guests. If you or anyone you know would like to be a guest on the show, please send an email to parishpodcast@gmail.com. That's parishpodcast@gmail.com. You're still here? Click on the next episode for more from the Perish the Thought Show.